The Monday, November 13th, 2023 meeting of the Juvenile Detention Center Board will now come to order. Sheila, will you call the roll, please? Here. Yes, he emailed us, said they're short-staffed, so he's having to fulfill another obligation. Judge Daniel, have you had an opportunity with regard to the minutes of the previous meeting to review those minutes?
I have reviewed the minutes, and I would like to suggest a clarification of a motion that I made, and I'm sure it's just because I was inarticulate. But the motion which is reflected in here that was adopted after amendment, I would like it for the minutes to reflect that a motion was made that this board form a committee comprised of Dr. Herron and Ms. Clara Maxwell to establish a relationship with the Rutherford County Legislative Delegation, period. This committee would ask that any juvenile detention bills include consideration of the financial impact on the county if passed, and if passed, that the state fund those financial increases, period. With that change, I've found the rest of the minutes to be in order.
Is there any objection to the change? Seeing none, we have a motion for the minutes as amended. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Director Cope. All those in favor of the minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes stand amended. Thank you, Judge Daniel. At this point, I'm going to recognize Dr. Herron. She has a guest. Dr. Herron?
Good afternoon, Judge Carr. I'm sorry, excuse me.
Not
Mayor,
quite, but thank you.
Mayor Carr and the board. I have with me my student intern, Joelis Rivera from MTSU Social Work Program, and she's graduating in December, I'm sorry. And she just wanted to observe. Her passion is juvenile delinquency, and so just wanted to observe this board and be a part.
Well, thank you very much. Welcome. I hope you find what we have to say enlightening. I'm sure it'll be entertaining, but hopefully it's informative. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Herron. With that,
I wanted to, my name said on the roll call? I didn't hear it. I just want everyone to know I am here. I wanted the minutes to reflect that
Sheila, let the minutes reflect that it was an oversight that Ms. Maxwell's name was not called, but she is here in attendance, and she was here before the chairman. Thank you. That being said, Sheila, we have nobody on for public comments. Is that correct? Thank you. Lynn, open positions, item 4, please.
We currently have a total of 5 full-time open positions. We have 2 male detention officer openings, 2 female detention officer openings, and we also have a sergeant position that has come open. One of our new hires from last month failed to complete the background check process, and then we had one of our recent female hires that went out with a sick child and never returned. So 2 of the positions we thought we had filled have not worked out for us.
Questions from the committee, the board? Judge Daniel, you're recognized.
Once these folks are hired, how much time is expended in training them and the expense associated with that?
So there's 2 parts to the hiring and the expenses involved. The new hires all have to have a background that is done through the HR department, which I believe there's a cost for. They are drug screened, which there is a cost for, and they have to have, per some minimum standards, a physical stating that they're able to complete the job as required. Those can be recuperated by the county in the event that they work long enough to receive a check. Additionally, on top of that, we have about, depending upon what timing in the month they are hired, a 3 to 4 week process of in-house training before they are able to work their positions as a full, not doing any shadowing type of work, but ready to go independent on their own. And then we have a uniform that we supply to our employees. And if, obviously we keep up with those items and require them to be returned upon their release from service. Like I said, if they're long enough to get a check, it's a lot easier to take care of those. We have gone to the extreme of having to send certified mail stating that they need to return certain items by a certain date, and then we can prosecute if necessary. It has not ever made it to that point, but the time and energy involved in working with these, new hires that decide for whatever reason that it's not a good fit for them, it can be taxing. And I wish there was a better way to make sure you're getting the right people, but you never know until you're there doing it, and that's when they realize whether they're a good fit for the job or not.
These people that left, had they completed all that process? And
We
were they-
had let me think about that for a second. The background check that failed, they had not even really started yet, so that would have just been the drug screen and obviously the background check and those items. We hadn't even issued them a uniform yet, I don't believe. And then the one with the sick child, she was getting very close to, if she had not already, being released to full service in the facility. So that one hurt a little bit. I believe, I think she has turned in all of her items, but if not, we are obviously in the process of recuperating those.
how long are they shadowed in their performance as far as getting them trained?
So they have a week worth, I believe, of shadowing, and that's after they've gone through the 2 to 3 weeks of all of the required necessary trainings that the state requires us to do with them, and that's, first aid, CPR, plus the items that we require them to do in-house.
Are they required to familiarize themselves with the SOP?
Yes, they are.
Lynn, I have a question. Did you say there were 1 or 2 that had started and had completed the training that did not return to work? Was it 1 or 2?
We had, just here in this last bunch, one of them had started and was, if she hadn't already been released to full duty, she was very, very close to
That's the one you referred to that hurt a little bit, that was unexpected,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Okay, but I thought I heard you say there was another, was that correct?
There was another new hire that failed her background check, so she hadn't, been immersed yet.
Right.
We knew she was coming, and we wanted her to come, but they didn't work out.
The woman that had completed the training, the child was sick and didn't come back. Have you contacted HR to determine why she didn't come back? Is there a way to ascertain that? It might be important to know that.
We have not reached out. We contacted her, obviously, because she was a no-show for several days straight in a row, and then she just stopped answering and stopped returning phone calls.
So she didn't give any formal notice that she wasn't returning?
She did not.
Interesting.
That happens all the time. Us getting a 2-week notice in this day and age is impressive, honestly.
But she didn't, we're not even talking about an advance notice. We're talking about she didn't show up and then refused to take your calls to offer an explanation about why she didn't show up.
That's correct.
I guess what I'm interested in, I don't understand that. I'm way out of date. I need to get in the 21st century, I guess. I don't know. But my point being, I'm trying to find out if we could use that to ascertain how we could do a better job, not just with your department, but this is something we struggle with across the county. So this, I'm not targeting you at all, but I know we struggle with this. So how do we get that information so we can do better?
I have, just on the whole concept of not giving notice, I've read several articles where I'll call it the new generation, it seems as the mindset is, if you're going, although I disagree with this, their mindset in these couple of articles were, you don't give me a notice of when I'm going to be terminated, so I'm not going to give you a notice when I'm going to leave your employment.
Director Cope, I'm asking you run a department as well. Do you struggle with this, and to what extent have you been able to mitigate the effects of this type of situation?
Unfortunately, Mayor, it's almost the world we live in now when it comes to that. I recently had one was a no-call, no-show, and it's usually your, like Director Duke said, it's usually your newer staff. Had one that was a no-call, no-show. We reached out to her for a couple days, called her emergency contacts, sent Murfreesboro Police Department over there to do a welfare check, and she answered the door and said, why don't they just let me quit in peace? And my reply to that was, well, why didn't you tell somebody you quit? But unfortunately, that really is that's what we're working in today. We've done exit interviews before when you can reach out and they'll be willing to do it. It doesn't happen very often at our facility, but occasionally it will, where you'll have someone who just up and quits and doesn't show back up, won't answer the phone.
Well, if I may, just to interrupt, but to be really clear, I'm not talking about somebody who decides to quit without advance notice. I'm talking about somebody who tells you they didn't quit, but quit, and you can't find out if they quit. I'm trying to find out, did you quit, or did you end up in a ditch somewhere?
Right,
You have an issue? We're trying to be concerned here.
That's the reason that we'll send.
I'm going, okay, I get what Ms. Duke is saying about, well, if you're going to fire me, you don't give me notice, so I'm going to quit with that notice. But you didn't even have notice, so I'm talking about the other thing.
Unfortunately, that's what we live with employment today. It doesn't happen that much, but occasionally you'll have that. It's unfortunate too, and you won't. There's no suspicion that anything's wrong with the employee. They may be doing a great job. They just, whether it be embarrassment or whatever it may be, they just will not reach out, and they won't return calls to us or HR.
Unresponsive. Ms. Maxwell, you're recognized. If you could get your microphone, please, ma'am. Thank you.
I think a lot of it has to do with confrontation. They don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation where they know that they may be quitting for no reason whatsoever, other than they just don't like the job. So I think that's what a lot of it is. They just don't like confrontation. They'd rather go out on social media and say something to their friends rather than walk in and tell their boss, I'm sorry, I'm not happy, I'm giving my notice.
You're exactly right. It really comes down to an embarrassment thing sometimes, and they just don't want to have that, like you said, that confrontation.
This particular employee, when we had initially hired them, they had which is fine, it's just part of our policies. They had an unnatural hair color, and we made sure that they knew that if they were going to work at the facility, they had to have some form of natural hair color. And so they went to through the process and got their hair like they needed to have it. And last time I saw the employee, they were walking to their car laughing and smiling, and then that was that.
Judge Daniel.
One question that I ask is, in Bill's case and our case here, when that employee then later seeks another job and there's a reference requirement, how do you respond to that?
Ms. Duke?
No one calls and checks references anymore. That's a antiquated.
Cope?
But to be sure, Judge, I always contact HR and let them mark that person as unrehirable.
It is a question on some of the new paperwork that we do for HR when we go through the process of getting them off payroll, and they ask the department head if they're eligible for rehire, and if not, what's the reason for that?
Any other questions? Educational Services Report, Ms. Duke.
Data report that's on the table?
Oh, my apologies. Yes, data report.
Okay, so you have in front of you what our population was as of this morning. We had a total of 13 young folks with us. 7 of those were from Rutherford County, and quite a few of them, whether it was Rutherford County or out of county, did have court today. So they may or may not be with us when I return to the building. You can also see that the majority of the young people are 17 in this particular population count.
Any questions for Ms. Duke about the data report? Seeing none, we'll go to item 6. Now we can talk about the Education Services Report.
This is the usual information that you've come to expect from our education department. Still have, working with the Board of Education, and Mr. Eric Davis is coming in for the month of October to date. He had one young person that he was working with, and the rest of the folks were being seen by our in-house staff, and they were using the Edgenuity educational platform.
We will wait a minute. Looks like y'all are reviewing the material. Judge Daniel, you're recognized.
Do we have any females?
Today we did not, although I just did my census to the state, and we did have a young lady for about 7 days of the month.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, if there is no objection, we'll move to item 7, other business, the PREA audit.
Right, so when I originally set out the agenda, I forgot that I had not yet shared our PREA audit information with the board or committee yet, so we're going to start with the board as per usual. You'll remember that PREA stands for the Prison Rape Elimination Act, and we have to do these audits or monitoring every 3 years, and this was our third PREA audit since it has become required for juvenile facilities. We have passed all of them, obviously. This last one doesn't really get to where it says it's approved until you're on the last page, which is page 4, and it says number of standards met, which is 43, and the ones exceeded and not met were 0. So that's basically him saying that we met the standards that we were required to meet per the PREA law, and that we have passed for this round and won't have to do this again for another 3 years.
Questions regarding the PREA audit? Seeing none, we'll go to B, update on the grant discussion.
So at the last meeting, we had a little bit of discussion about some grant possibilities, especially involving mental health. There was some discussion about Nashville and their ability to have some grant-funded services at the facility there. We had our grant coordinator look into it, and we had some discussions back and forth. The particular grant that we believe was being referenced was a federal grant for substance abuse and mental health services, and it is available for community-based organizations. So what that means is Rutherford County Juvenile Detention Center, as a government agency, is not eligible to apply, but if there were a community-based organization in the community that wanted to apply for it, and in some way, which was agreed upon by all, wanted to incorporate those services with the Juvenile Detention Center, that was something that we could entertain. But as far as Rutherford County actually applying for that particular grant, it's not something that we're able to do.
Judge Daniel, you're recognized.
Would the juvenile courts probation entities not be able to do that?
It would be my understanding that since all of the probation that juveniles have the ability to be involved with would be either state-funded or county-funded, which would then both be governmental, which would make them ineligible, as would the juvenile court. Now, there are, additionally, this particular grant had some very specific boxes that it wanted checked. It wasn't just for good, solid, well-proven mental health help. It was specific to a certain population. So what you would need is a community organization that has a heart for that particular population, and they would want to work with that population in this particular case, a juvenile detention setting. And I'm not sure that they would be able to garnish, based on how I read the information, really enough participants from our current population to make it worthwhile. But that being said, if there are any grants that are for community-based organizations that they would like to reach out and see if we're willing to or able to work with them, that we're open to.
Maxwell, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you. Cumberland Heights has a local, they're not just over there in, I can't remember where they are located, but, and actually it looks like the middle of nowhere, but they do have a facility here in Murfreesboro, and they have an excellent program that they can work with high school age and young adults. Would that be a program that could possibly look into this? I still have friends who work over there, and it's counselors and such.
So I was speaking to someone earlier today about that there was a time when I wore a juvenile probation hat. And as a juvenile probation officer, we worked very closely with Cumberland Heights. What I can tell you at that time was that it was private pay.
Yeah,
and you're going to find that that is the struggle for most of the families that we deal with that are at risk in many different areas of their life situation. And private pay is real hard for the majority of the kids that we're working with right now. Not all of them,
No,
but a lot of them.
I know it is. I know it is. And that's why I was hoping if they could access some of this grant money, they could possibly give many scholarships, grant and aid to some families, especially if they get identified through our probation and juvenile court system, that this family could really use some outside help, but they don't have the funds for this. And that's what I was thinking, that maybe they could do that. Well, we'd have to approach them, let them know this money's available. I don't know what the next step is, but I would like to see us do something like with that, and because I think they need a handout. They need
Right.
they need a helping hand.
It is a need. I would love for, you know, I also think that and I am not a grant specialist at all, but it's generally nonprofit, non-governmental agencies that are eligible to apply. And so I think if that, to me, would seem like that organization like Cumberland Heights would also not be eligible to apply because they are making a profit.
I will say this, with regard to grants, Rutherford County has an outstanding grant director in Reba Carlton. So much so, Reba has pointed out to the county, and I think I may have mentioned this before, that the county, because of its size, it's now, if it's not the fourth largest county in the state, it very soon will be, in a matter of hours, if not minutes, right? But as a result, you do a comparative analysis between us and Hamilton County. Hamilton County has a grants division within their county government called Community Development, and they have 4 people staffed in that department, and they're very successful in soliciting those grants for things like this. And so many times you don't know what's available because you don't have the bandwidth to go look and find it. And so much of the time is spent knowing where to look, how to apply, how to make it work. And so I'm telling you, come January, we're going to be on the road to expanding that particular aspect of Rutherford County government, because we're literally leaving millions of dollars in federal and state grants unsolicited just because we don't have the bandwidth. And I'm hoping, in the unlikelihood that it's not there, that it may still not be there, we will know for certain when we go in this direction. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited about the prospects of doing that. Hopefully we can remedy some of this for you, Ms. Duke.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Ms. Duke? Is there any other business before the board? Judge Daniel, yes, sir.
As you may know, and our county attorney pointed this out by an email to all of us, Nashville Public Radio has had a podcast drop of 4 episodes. It deals with the genesis of how this board was formulated and why it was formulated. And I suggest all of our board members should listen to all 4 parts. The last part, I think, has been dropped in the last couple of 3 days. A couple of things I want to say about that is that it is imperative, and of course we've taken the necessary steps in our SOP to emphasize and require the compliance with state law as to those who are detained. And as long as we follow the law, we're doing what we're supposed to do. That's the first thing I want to say. And where this broke down, as I said when we very first began, is 2 reasons: a misapplication of the law and a failure of what is known as a judicial magistrate who was not trained, judicial commissioner who was not properly trained to sign off on these detentions. Now, under our new SOP, we're requiring a judicial magistrate or the judge himself, to make a probable cause determination before someone is detained, and that's important. Second thing about this podcast that I would reflect on is that attorneys that were in this court failed to recognize that one of the ways to reel in a judge who is not following the law was to file a complaint with the Court of Judiciary, or their equivalent now, the Board of Judicial Conduct. That's number one. That would have brought it to attention and perhaps gotten some relief. The second part of that is that in this podcast, I can't find that any attorney properly appealed a case that had this problem involved, and or sought an extraordinary relief like a petition for habeas corpus that would have brought it to the court's attention. So there's plenty of places where this failed, but obviously it was not the appropriate thing to do, and the citizens and children of this community suffered for it. So I'm hoping that through our efforts that this won't be repeated, and people will recognize that the county has made a good faith effort to try to address these issues. But for our board, I would think it would be important that they know what the community has been exposed to, because they may be asked about it.
I appreciate that, and I wasn't going to address the podcast because I will say they reached out to the mayor's office and we declined comment on the issue for no other reason that the establishment of this board was for the purpose of moving forward and rectifying the wrongs that had been done, and without going into regurgitating the history of something that happened a year and a half ago and even longer. I failed to understand the reason why WPLN, National Public Radio, felt like it was necessary to regurgitate the story. I can't tell you how pleased I am with the composition of this board, what the board's done with establishing and rewriting the SOP, the relationship this board has with Ms. Duke, and the fact of the matter is you can't move forward if you're looking in the rearview mirror. And we glance in the mirror to make sure that we have proper context on why we're moving forward. But in my mind, we have fixed our gaze firmly out the windshield so we can act in the best interest of these young people who've unfortunately are given a hard time. Whether it's self-imposed or not, we're there to help them. And I think every board member on this agrees with that. And if there are no further comments, this board stands adjourned.